Voting is a civic duty. Let's register on the electoral list. This is a message from Equinoxe Television.
Hi there to all of you viewers of Equinoxe Television. Thank you so much for being with us on this edition of the news in the English language tonight. Our major stories right away. Cameroonians in the diaspora, especially those in Belgium, have been protesting at some embassies in Belgium to demand the whereabouts of Steve Akam, also known as Ramon Kota, the activist. He was arrested in Gabon and extradited to Cameroon, where he has been incommunicado for some time now. We will be telling you more on that in this edition of the news. And in religion, Catholic Christians today are celebrating the feast of the Assumption. It is the day they believe Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ, went up to heaven, body and soul. The Assumption today, Thursday, was characterized by holy masses in honor of the Blessed Virgin Mary at most parishes across the world. Those are our major stories. Details when we come back. Welcome back, viewers. Thank you so much for the confidence, and happy Assumption Day to all the Catholic Christians out there. As Catholic Christians celebrate the feast of the Assumption, insecurity continues in the northwest and southwest regions. That was yesterday. 4 taxis were destroyed allegedly by separatist fighters in Bamenda in the northwest region of the country. The incident occurred at a time when the debate on the change of cab colors in Bamenda is dividing. Let's now have more with Smart Jikangre, but he comes back to the incident which happened at Chair Street in Bamenda.
A cab driver stops his colleague to drop passengers in a car at Sonat Street in Bamenda. This taxi driver is among several others who have decided to do a sit-down strike in solidarity with colleagues who no longer have means to feed their families after their vehicles were burned. At the filling station in Chess Street, Bamenda, where over 6 taxis were set ablaze by suspected separatist fighters, we met inhabitants who were shocked about the incident. The act was committed when inhabitants of Chess Street were watching the UEFA Super Cup finals. It was the same inhabitants who struggled to put out the flames, but unfortunately, 4 taxis were badly affected by the inferno. The burning of these taxis has been linked to the ongoing debate for the change of taxi colors in the town of Bamenda from yellow to blue or white. This action comes several days after 2 taxis were burnt at the hospital roundabout in Bamenda.
And we told you in our headlines that today Catholic Christians across the world are celebrating the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. It is a day that they believe Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ, went up to heaven, body and soul. On your screens, that was at the Our Lady of Africa Kwasi Parish in Kwen Bamenda. Today, the Christians turned out massively to celebrate the feast of the Assumption despite the state of insecurity in the northwest region. The Holy Mass was officiated by Reverend Father Bertus Asanji, who says it's time more Christians pray to the Blessed Virgin Mary so she can intercede for peace to reign in the northwest and the southwest regions. The Christians on their part, especially members of the Catholic Women Association, say the Blessed Virgin Mary is the only purifier of our hearts. The 15th of August, you already know, is believed the Blessed Virgin Mary. According to Catholic Christians, the mother of Jesus Christ was taken up to heaven, body and soul, and the feast is celebrated by Catholics across the world. Now let's listen to a Catholic priest and also a member of the Catholic Women Association. In Bamenda, the Catholic priest begins by explaining the difference between the Ascension and the Assumption, especially as the Assumption this year is celebrated on a Thursday.
There is a distinction between Assumption and Ascension. Mary went up to heaven through the power of God, that is Assumption. But Jesus Christ went up to heaven through his own power, that is Ascension. And the significance of this celebration is that we should emulate the example of Mary in her humility, in her obedience, and in her service. And I think that within the context of the crisis in which we are living, we are invoking the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary to intercede for us so that peace may return in the northwest and the southwest region as we are experiencing the crisis in these two regions.
I think you went in French.
We are not perfect. We are human beings with human frailties. But looking up at Mother Mary, it remains a fervent wish that she intercedes for us, she strengthens us that we may be able to live according to her virtues.
Still in religion, in Bafoussam, in the west region of the country, Catholic Christians in Bafoussam, that was yesterday, effected a march for peace. And during the Holy Mass, in his homily, the Bishop of the Bafoussam Diocese, His Lordship Bishop Lonsi Paul Kenya, encouraged the faithful to register on the electoral list and monitor their votes when the time comes. Let's now have more of what happened in Bafoussam with Cedric Chakutio.
Less than a year before the next presidential election in Cameroon, the Bishop of Bafoussam, in his homily, calls on citizens with a voting age to go and register on electoral lists. He says it is a must for them as citizens.
Le devoir de voter est une exigence à tenir absolument. D'où la nécessité pour chacun d'entre vous.
It is your right to vote. You have to vote and monitor your vote. When you register, make sure they give you a small paper. It is with that paper that you will be eligible to vote.
Donc on lui a donné le petit papier, non? Il y en a qui sont venus me dire qu'on les a inscrits, ils attendent le papier. Allez le chercher. C'est la preuve que vous êtes inscrits.
According to him, it is not enough to just register, but to vote when the time comes and to monitor your vote.
Par charité pour notre pays et les générations futures, par obéissance à la volonté de Dieu, je vous en supplie, inscrivez-vous sur les listes électorales, allez voter et surveillez votre vote.
The man of God also drew a portrait of the candidate in favor of whom Catholic Christians will gain from granting their votes.
Nous devons aussi nous assurer que celui que nous votons nous a convaincus par un programme de société.
We have to be sure to vote the right person, someone who presented to us a good program that he will be able to respect and accomplish.
Un Cameroun prospère.
According to the Bishop of Bafoussam, a free and transparent election is a guarantee of peace, for which a march on the streets of Bafoussam was dedicated in the presence of Apostolic Nuncio for Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea.
Il faut que le corps et l'esprit de tout le monde.
The body and spirit should be one. We should not accept violence in our country. Violence is for the devil and goodness is for the angels. The bishop, on his part, insisted on the need for Cameroonians not to be spectators at a crucial moment in their country.
To this other lead story, Cameroonians in Belgium took hostage the Gabonese and Cameroonian embassies in Belgium to demand for the release of social media activist Raymond Kota. At the top of their voices while brandishing the pictures of both heads of state, they denounced government's continuous crackdown on civilians who have for several years now been demanding better governance. Immaculate Fogwe now takes us to Belgium.
The Cameroonian embassy in Belgium invaded by Cameroonians. They are requesting for the release of social media activist Steve Akam, commonly known as Raymond Kota, who has been in captivity for over 3 weeks. The protesters went ahead to chain the entrance into the embassy. A similar scenario took place at the Gabonese embassy in Belgium. The Cameroonians are reivindicating for the same cause. holding the Cameroon flag and pictures of the activist, the protesters are denouncing government's continuous crackdown on innocent civilians. Our government is unfair. We have a lot of ministers that embezzled billions of francs CFA, but they are free. The only thing Raymond Kota did was to denounce bad governance. All what is said is the truth. Raymond Kota should be set free. Raymond Kota has been urging Cameroonians to massively register their names on the electoral list. We want the government to inform us about the whereabouts of Raymond Kota. We are scared that what happened to Martinez Zogo or Samuel Wazizi repeats itself. It should be recalled that the activist was arrested in Gabon and forced to apologize to the head of state. He was later whisked off to Cameroon. Until date, his whereabouts is still a mystery. Is Raymond Kota still alive? Let's wait and see.
Now let's talk about Boko Haram insurgency in the northern regions of Cameroon. The inhabitants of Malaika and Moskota, all in the far north region, now live in extreme fear following the recent attacks of the Boko Haram terrorist groups in these localities. The people say the frequent activities of these armed men have greatly affected them, as they no longer go about their daily activities normally. Let's now have more on that with Mala Glory.
These are inhabitants of Malika returning to their homes with their families and their properties. This is after spending nights on the mountain for days following attacks and threats from the Boko Haram terrorist groups.
Nous vivons au quotidien des menaces.
These residents of Malika says they are often threatened by these groups of armed men. It's this insecurity that separates them from their home and render them orphans. The attack that took place since August 12 in the Mayo Sava Division, Far North region, has left fear in the hearts of the locals and has physically affected the youth. This young man says because of this situation, some of these youths have now turned to drinking and smoking. Faced with this rising insecurity, the locals now urge the government to reinforce security forces in this locality.
Nous voulons juste la sécurité, car avec la sécurité, on pourra redémarrer avec tout.
These locals say all they need is security in the area and the government to reinforce the military so they can continue with their farm work. And in the Mayo Moskota clan, few kilometers from Malika in the Mayo Tsanaga division, the people experience the same sad story. According to the United Nations, more than 40 people have been kidnapped in the Far North region since January 2024 by the Boko Haram groups who have been operating in this region for over 10 years.
And now let's come to President Paul Biya's outing in Paris, France today. France's declining influence in Africa is reflected in the representation of the continent states at commemorations of the Operation Dragoon, the history landing which opens the Southern Front that was today, August 15, 1994, I beg your pardon, with the massive participation of soldiers from the colonies, was commemorated with most former French, former African colonies absent. President Paul Biya today spoke on behalf of African leaders. For me, Armstrong Sander has more.
The ceremony at the famous Boulorese Metropoles was attended by President Paul Biya of Cameroon and 5 other African heads of state or government, notably Foreign Assembly of Togo, Faustin Archange Touadéra of the Central African Republic, Azali Assoumani of the Comoros, Brice Oligui Nguema of Gabon, and Aziz Akanok, Moroccan heads of government. Speaking on behalf of the foreign heads of state, President Paul Biya highlighted the important role of Africa in the preservation of France. He said those who fought with bravoure came from all over the French colonial empire in Africa. Africa's contribution was determinant in the liberation of France and from the occupation of Germany.
The thousands of men under leadership of the General de Ladre de Tassigny fought with courage, and many of them were from the colonial empire of France, who came from sub-Saharan Africa and elsewhere, and the contribution of Africa was significant to break the German occupation.
President Paul Biya also used the opportunity to narrow the role played by Africans in the protection of France to his country, Cameroon.
Among others, it was to raise troops in Africa, considered as a potential base for reconquering Europe, that Colonel Leclerc went to Cameroon. The rallying of Cameroon, one of the very first, was immediately obtained as early as the 27th of August, 1940, which made General de Gaulle say that Cameroon had just made a wonderful decision and are setting a magnificent example.
Some observers, however, question how France got to commemorate a piece of shared French and African history at a time when Paris' policy on the continent is being challenged. To them, France's declining influence in Africa is reflected in the representation of the continent's state at the commemoration of Operation Dragon, which took place in the Southern Front on August 15, 1944, with the massive participation of soldiers from the colonies in Africa.
Thank you for me, Armstrong Sanders. That report brings us to the end of the first part of the news. Let's now move on to talking points. Welcome back, viewers. Today is the 15th of August, and it is commemorated by Catholic Christians as the Assumption Thursday. And our guest tonight is a Reverend Father of the Our Lady of Africa Kwasi Parish in Bamenda, Reverend Father Bertus Asanji. Thank you so much for accepting to be our guest on Talking Points tonight. Now, can you reiterate to us the importance or significance of the Assumption Thursday today to Christians, especially Catholic Christians?
First of all, what is the Assumption? Before we get into the significance, what is the Assumption? The Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary is a feast, a solemnity, celebrated only in the Catholic Church and in the Orthodox Catholic Church, where Catholic Christians, they believe that after the earthly life of Mary, the mother of Jesus, she was taken up to heaven, body and soul, which means that her body did not undergo corruption. That unlike us, when we die, our bodies will undergo corruption. But Mary was the only woman having the exception to that rule, so she was taken up to heaven. And the problem with this particular celebration is that it is a dogma, which means it is not recorded anywhere in the scriptures. And many people think that the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary, or if you say that Mary was taken up to heaven, body and soul, they may think that it is the same thing as the Ascension of Jesus Christ. No, that's not the same thing. Ascension of Jesus Christ is different from Assumption, from the point of view that while Jesus Christ went up to heaven through his own power, because he was God, Mary was assumed into heaven through the power of Jesus Christ, because whatever Mary is thanks to the merit of her son Jesus Christ. And so this particular feast has a lot of significance, you know. The first significance is that our own resurrection is assured. If Mary has been taken up to heaven, our own resurrection is assured, which means that one day we shall be united with God in heaven. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the second significance is that Mary lived a virtuous life. That's why, because only those who have led a virtuous life can go to heaven. And so because Mary led this virtuous life, we are also called upon to be like Mary, to follow her example And that is why following her example entails that one day we shall also go to heaven like her. Another significance is that we are also called to be humble. Only the humble will make heaven. And Mary was humble, obedient unto God. And she said in the gospel according to Luke that I am the handmaid of the Lord. Let this be done unto me according to thy word. And because of her humility and because of her obedience to the will of the Father, that obedience in carrying out the work of salvation, that is in carrying the author of our salvation, Jesus Christ. That is why we celebrate this great feast, to think about the merits of Mary, what she did, and to also.
Thank you, Father. Now my second question. There is usually this confusion between honoring Mary and worshipping the Blessed Virgin Mary. As a Catholic priest, can you bring some clarification to that?
There's always this confusion between worshipping and honoring. And I'm going to use three Greek words. Latria, which means worship. And latria, worship here, refers only to the worship of God. Only God alone can be worshipped. This has to do with praises. This has to do with adoration. And this has to do with praying directly to God. Praying directly to God, the only channel through which our prayers can be answered. That is latria. Then we have now dulia, which has to do with honor. And this dulia, we have dulia and hyperdulia. Dulia has to do with the honoring the saints, and Mary is inclusive. Then hyperdulia is another higher form of veneration, or another form of honor that we give only to Mary, which means that you cannot compare the honor of somebody. We can honor we honor human beings. Only God can be worshipped. Mary was a human being. She was not God. Therefore, she is being honored. This honor is coming as a result of the fact that she was the mother of Jesus, the author of our salvation. So we give her that special place. Not that she is God. No, that is honor. But worship is reserved only to God. So there's that distinction between honoring and worshiping. We honor human beings, and Mary was a human being, and we worship only God, which has to do with praise and adoration.
And now, Father, there is also this argument of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary featuring nowhere in the Bible. Now, can you situate those watching us about this doubt of the Assumption not featuring anywhere in the Holy Scriptures?
Yeah, the most interesting thing is that nowhere in the Scriptures will you find the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. We read in Revelation chapter 12 from verse 1 to 6 about a woman with 12 stars on her head. This interpretation is given to refer to Mary being that woman. But nowhere will you see very clearly that stating very clearly the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. However, this particular doctrine came from a tradition, the church's tradition, because the church does not operate using Holy Scriptures. It uses the teaching office of the church, which is the magisterium. That's where the dogma defining Mary, or defining the Assumption of Blessed Mary, Virgin Mary, is coming from. It's coming from the teaching office of the church, which we call the magisterium. We have the tradition of the church, because even the Scriptures came from tradition, which means that it is through the tradition of the church, or the tradition at the time, that we come to know about the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And it has been defined very clearly as a dogma, because it is the teaching of the church. It is not scriptural, but we believe that the son of the mother of God will have allowed the mother to undergo corruption, the corruption of death after dying. And so we believe that she was taken up to heaven, body and soul, and her body had no corruption, or her body suffered no effects of corruption, just like any other human body. and we believe in that particular dogma, that particular doctrine.
Thanks very much, Father, for accepting the invitation and talking points. And happy big day, Maria, once more.
Thank you very much, and happy big day, Maria, to all the Catholic Christians out there watching us, watching Equinoxe television.
Thank you so much, Father Bertus Asanji, for accepting to be our guest on Talking Point tonight, and happy Assumption to all Catholic Christians out there. Thank you so much, viewers, for being with us. Don't go away. Our programs continue. Bye-bye for now.